Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hello, we're back.
So, uh, uh, hmm, I guess the best way to
Where do
kind of,
we begin?
I guess the best way to kind of start this would just be immediately to just dive right into the rest of issue 20 to just talk
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
So, Sally has a cute duck hat that she uses this, to, sneak
Do we ever
into a
see that
base.
duck hat again? And what a conspicuous disguise, too. She's
Yeah,
going into Robotropolis with a duck hat,
yeah. But
like asking to get shot.
this is more of, Art Mullaney doing the Sat AM art style, and it's a pretty great art style overall that I feel like really sticks with the actual like overall vibe of the comic for a while.
hmm It just feels weird because it feels like some things in this B story aren't colored at all. They're just left white.
Yeah. So the B side of the
Because we got
story is effectively part zero to is part zero to the Sally miniseries, which we're gonna get into in a bit. But I would say that the best way to kind of describe it is she sneaks into the base on a solo mission, and she meets up with a character. Uh, that character's name is
ten tenders.
yeah is Joffrey St. John, who is, or at least he says that he is someone that was in His Majesty's Secret Service and is here to help. And that is
And
effectively
all
it.
he ever does is help, clearly. Uh,
Yeah. So I
on
think
its own merit, the miniseries, no, sorry, this B story is fine. In
yeah.
retrospective, like looking back, this is not a good B side because Joffrey is here.
I think I'll reserve my explanation on why I don't really like Joffrey later, but when it comes to this B-side by itself, it's pretty great, and it kind of leads into the miniseries, which we're gonna rate as its whole thing, not just like each individual issue, because it's
Yeah,
kind of hard to say individually. But I will say that I uh, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I dislike Joffrey like immensely. I just have a problem with the way he's written and the way he's implemented. I think Joffrey is an interesting character, the way that he is, and we're gonna get into more of him later, but man is he awkward to talk about.
he's he's a good character in theory. When you start picking apart his character and his creation and everything he does, he gives me the ick
Yeah, I guess
in ways I can only describe as giving me the ick.
so.
He's an icky character.
Were you aware that this was the first time Maximilian Acorn's full name is said?
I
Because I was looking for it the
was
whole time, and
not.
it's like, oh, huh, they finally said his name. Because if I remember correctly, they say it once in the anime. They say it a few times in the animated show, especially in the flashback to just before the war started. But they never actually said Maximilian Acorn's name until this issue. It's like, huh.
I'm kind of looking for it again. Are we on the miniseries now?
No, issue 20.
Oh, issue 20.
Speaking of
Okay.
which, what did you give this issue by itself? Like I gave the whole issue a silver because it's not
Yeah.
bad, especially with like the first part
Yeah.
and the B-side.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna get into it, but
Yeah.
you also go with silver.
Yeah. Low silver because Joffrey's here.
And
That A side can only do so much.
the Sally miniseries as a whole.
Oh.
Would you like to give your score now and then talk about it?
It has its moments. I'm really struggling to be objective with this. It's got a lot of good concepts. It's got some good side characters. At best, it's a bronze. In retrospective, it's a stone.
That's
Looking
fair.
back towards the end of the series, this is a stone.
Now,
There are
I'm going to
sorry,
explain
there
myself when we
are
get to it.
miniseries and stuff that do this plot line almost beat for beat in better ways than this one does.
That's fair. I'm going
But
to I'm going to explain myself, but I actually gave this whole miniseries a gold. And I'm going to explain it when we get there because I feel like it's a very fascinating thing looking at it objectively without like a lot of the like outside knowledge and just take it as it is. And you can kind of
yeah,
see why this miniseries is the reason why Ken Penders became the de facto like showrunner effectively of the
hmm
Sonic comics for a while. And you could kind of see, but we will get there.
yeah.
So,
If you had replaced Joffrey with Anton, it would have been a gold.
so, uh, Sally brings uh Joffrey to her little camp of what I will refer to as uh side characters. They're supposed to
Yeah.
be like new recruits that they're like bringing up to speed to be a like B team effectively, but they're side characters. They're gonna show up a while, or at least a lot of them, but they're never going to like have like their own spotlight, which having this miniseries be their spotlight is kind of neat in retrospect.
hmm
So you
Yeah.
have
I
Hamlin.
also like the opening panel there where it just looks like they're scurrying on all fours, and I find that very very funny. It's
Yeah.
like Skyler.
So you have Hamlin the pig, Jeffrey the skunk, Joffrey whatever, Arlo the
Yeah.
armadillo,
Yeah.
Penelope the duck, and Dylan the porcupine. And they're
Yeah.
all uh designed for children's
C
content
tier
esque
material.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah. They're C list material at best. And Joffrey is itching to kill them.
So one thing that I wrote down that I actually kind of want to point out is the Princess Sally logo. Something about it like really triggered my excitement for Sally as a character. And
Oh
it
yeah.
there's something so interesting about her logo being a crown being thrown. Because Sally as a
Oh
character
yeah.
has always been not really the like protected proper princess. She's always been someone who wants to get her hands dirty.
hmm
And this miniseries really does kind of show the lengths that she will personally go to get jobs done. And it's really fascinating because she's shown this before, like even in the Begins series, where she
Yeah.
was willing to just turn herself into a robot as a kind of scapegoat to kind of see how the roboticization works. And it's like she's willing to give her life for the cause. And I've
Yeah.
always found that that's so fascinating for Sally as a character.
Hmm. Well, it makes her a really good team leader as well, and is actually the reason why Sonic listens to her on instinct and reflex.
So Joffrey is immediately aggro to Hamlin. And to
Yeah.
be fair, Hamlin did nothing. Joffrey is just trying to attack him. And then Sally goes, I don't know why you're so upset. And Hamlin's like, what? What's going on? And it's very funny because this sort of like, I don't know why I'm being attacked is Hamlin's whole character for like the rest of the entire comic, which I
Yeah.
feel is kind
Which
of funny.
is fair. It's fair that he has to put up with this.
Okay, so the goal of these characters is that they're going to go to these three locations. One of them they just blew up, and the other two they're about to head to. Is they're going to take these out and they're going to limit Robotnik's communications network, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And one of the
Yeah, because they're, yeah.
and one of the really fascinating things is one of the really fascinating things is you kind of see Sally just going along with some of the weird like ego stuff that Joffrey like showcases because you could kind of see that she is used to Sonic's level of ego and so she's just letting it
Hmm.
go by. But whenever Joffrey steps out of line, she immediately tells him, which is important because this isn't Sally. For most of this entire comic, from when they showed up at
It's
the
at
base,
the campsite because she's got
the
a different colored vest
yeah, it was like
in the
from the moment
campsite
that she
than
showed up
she
at the
does when they're
campsite
running.
to the end of issue 2, Sally has been in a pod, and a robotic duplicate has been masquerading as her. So the whole idea was that Joffrey, who was a double agent, was going to replace Sally, show Robotnik that she has been replaced, send the duplicate out, and then at the last second betray them, kill everyone involved, and now he has robotic Sally Acorn.
That they can
Unfortunately,
just take back to Knothole that Joffrey doesn't know where the location of is.
this is very important. Joffrey does not know the location of Knothole, and only Sally does out of all of these characters. Is that only Sally knows the location of Knothole, or I should say, the specific freedom fighter base that is on the outskirts of Knothole. Because Knothole as a location is different than the base that the freedom fighters are at. And we start to see this dichotomy happen in this section of comics.
Yeah.
I mostly think it's because they forgot that it's supposed to be a secret location
I
half the
think that
time.
they for yeah. Well, I think Ken forgot because his whole story is Ken Pander's baby, basically.
Yeah. So, as a reveal, like Robotnik basically going, hey, look, I have already captured Sally, and I can make a robotic duplicate that is smart enough to trick people into thinking that it's her. Fair. The only
Which
unfortunate
will
part
become important.
is that he then flips the switch to roboticize Sally. Turns out that the Sally that is in the pod at that moment that he did it was the robotic duplicate, and it blows up his entire system, which is
Yeah.
really fascinating that it works like that.
Hmm.
But Joffrey then says that the entire time the robot had been out, and then they swapped it that night, so Robotnik would then see it and know that Joffrey is like going with the plan.
Yeah.
And so,
They had to basically make the switch at the last moment, is what they had to do.
yeah, and then the Freedom Fighter Underground, which is the group of fighters that he's managing, come up, save them, they all get away. Uh, the two characters that were injured earlier also get out of there safe, and they're all basically awarded like for their bravery, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like I got really stuck on a plot hole, okay? So I'm gonna just read this out. So Joffrey was either recruited into being a double agent, was always feeding Robotnik information, or he hired him the night that they blew up the first base. Either way, none of this of how Joffrey became a double agent was ever mentioned, which I just find is very fascinating.
Suspicious. Yeah. I'll tell you which option is more likely given Joffrey's future exploits. He
Uh,
was feeding information from the start. He sells information.
yeah, I wouldn't doubt that either.
Because I don't think he specifically was feeding information to Robotnik, but it's really suspicious he's there when Sally is there.
So the final few pages of this entire comic, I kind of just like saw off of the plot and just kind of shove it into a dumpster because they have this little romantic moment where Joffrey kisses Sally and Sally goes,
Not earned,
maybe.
yeah.
And you then have to sit there because later into the comic series, it's revealed that Sally is only a little bit younger than Sonic. Sonic canonically is about 16 at most times in the storyline, even though it's been years and years. He stays around like 16. Sally would be 14, Tails would be 12. Like, for anyone
Yeah.
keeping track. Joffrey is 22.
If
And
anyone wants to know where the ick comes from,
yeah,
that's
it's
where the ick comes from. It's
and and even if
it's
you kind
not
of want to
good.
be like, mentally they're all about like 18, 19, it's still a little weird
Ah,
that
she's
the
still too
writer would
young.
just go out of his way to go, no, no, their age difference was supposed to feel weird. And I was like, okay, I guess. But yeah, without that like icky moment in mind, the all of it's pretty solid. It's pretty solid, like showing Sally's leadership skills with like her being away from Sonic as a primary character and her being built up as a leader character was very fascinating. It also had really great action scenes and it honestly had a pretty great character dynamic between all of the side characters. Even though we didn't really go too much into their personalities, they're kind of one note, but the actual like interaction between them felt genuine, you know?
Yeah.
And it's why I felt the need to give it a gold, but I totally understand someone just taking this entire miniseries and shoving it into the dumpster because the last page and a half of the third issue. So I can
It's
understand that.
drawn.
Did you have anything
There
else to
are
say?
bits of it that are really good. There are bits. Anytime Joffrey is involved, I just get the ick.
That's fair. And I feel like Joffrey gets a little bit less icky as time goes on, but he's still pretty annoying to deal with as a character
Oh
because of
yeah.
this association. So moving on, uh, how did you feel about issue 21? This is,
I
for context, this is the
loved
first
the art
issue that is
in this one.
drawn by Spaziante, and I think it's
Oh, you can
fantastic.
tell. He's got such a fun style. I miss his style. Was it the best? No. Was it the most adorable? No. But the
Hit,
good style mixed with the story, it's so good. It's like
I
if
would
this
ref
had been my first comic, I would have fallen in love instantly.
the issues that we did get first, technically, we did fall in love with, which is a very
Yeah,
fascinating place to start, and we will get there eventually, but
it's a long time
Spaziante's art
eventually.
style is what I would describe as explosively dynamic, where
Oh yeah.
every camera shot makes it feel like that the page is exploding with action, and
Well,
I
it's
really
also
like it.
you can trace movement as well. You know exactly where characters are moving. You know what direction that something is moving in and out of. So there's always like, even though one panel doesn't like draw the eye into the next, like some other artists do, you can always tell what's going on in the issues themselves.
But yeah, so the plot of issue 21 is Robotnik creates a robot. This robot is a. Let me see if I can actually find
You want me to
the
give the
exceptionally
name?
versatile Evolve android known as Eve.
Uh huh.
She is a
I love you.
she is a cybernetic shapeshifter that creates problems for Sonic, is unable to be stopped, and whenever he outthinks her or outmaneuvers her, she shifts into a form that he can't do the same thing again, which is a very
And,
fascinating
and very,
fight.
very important too. She is made of nanites. This
Yeah,
is like the first time we're seeing nanites in the story.
yeah. And as she kind of evolves and takes on more monstrous forms, she then becomes a brain with tentacles, and she starts basically taunting Sonic, but then basically goes, "So I figured out what my problem is," and then she kills Robotnik. And it's such
Unceremoniously too. It is so fast. Sonic doesn't even have time to he doesn't even have time to think about intervening.
yeah. And it's like, "Oh." And it's like, "Yeah, so now I've surpassed my creator. I'm gonna go destroy everything on this planet." And Sonic basically appeals to uh, a human side of her, and Eve takes it up on his words and just leaves the planet. And
Yeah,
it's like, huh,
she just goes and figures stuff out. She figures out where her boundaries are, and I love that. And I love the butterfly design as she's like going through space.
yeah. And it's very fascinating that it just kind of ends there. It's like, huh. And Snively is like, I don't know what to do now. Robotnik's kind of gone now.
Yeah, My boss is gone. Who's going to pay my checks?
Okay, so as I was saying, uh, it's incredibly fascinating to kind of look at this comic for one very important reason. Did you know who the writer was?
Well, let me scroll back up.
This is a story written by Ken alone. This is one of the first ones in which it's only Ken writing.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's because Kantarovich was writing the miniseries, or at least most of the miniseries. And it was at that point that I noticed something. The action was brilliantly drawn by both sides. The actual character writing in the miniseries is what I really liked about it. The actual concept is what I really liked about this issue. And when those two were working in conjunction, it worked out pretty well, you know? And then I
Yeah.
realized something about the way
I
that,
think there there's something I have to say.
yeah,
I like that we're talking about this one after the miniseries as well, because when a Pender's idea lands, it is spectacular. He does have his good moments. And when he's like allowed to do like existential concepts and like stuff like that, it's great. This was a good story. This was a really good story.
yeah, I'm going to explain my score after this next issue. So, how did you feel about issue 22? Which, of course,
Yeah.
Robotnik was going to come back in the very next issue, but they
Oh
did
yeah.
something interesting with it.
I love how Queen Sally's drawn in the first half of this. She's adorable.
Yeah.
Look at that face. Her eyes are well proportioned and everything.
So, there is a bit of a continuity error in this issue that gets like hammered out later on when they explain it.
Oh, just wait.
Yeah.
You were
So,
saying?
um, so the place that Robotnik gets sent to is the future timeline that Nicole is from, which I thought we wouldn't see again, but apparently we do actually see it a few more times. In this
Forgot that we
universe,
see her again.
Robotnik was defeated in a similar manner to Cybersonic. But in this one, instead of becoming a robot to more directly control his troops, he became a robot to shove his consciousness into a satellite so he can, quote, never lose. And when Robotnik kind of finds Robo Robotnik up there, I could
He's
honestly
alone.
feel like he's a bit annoyed with that's how this turned out. You know, it's like, that's,
Oh yeah,
huh.
completely.
And just so you know, this is not the same Robo Robotnik from Cybersonic's universe, but it's the same concept. Where
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
Which
okay.
is why it tripped me up a bit because I knew there was a Robo Robotnik from the good future.
Yeah. Uh, kind of jumping the gun, but this is the Robo Robotnik that comes back to become Eggman after issue 50, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The still alive one or the Robo Robotnik one?
The Robo Robotnik one. Because,
Okay.
uh, so Robotnik then gets into a teleporter to be sent back to his timeline, which is more like just moving around the universal grid, you know, to explain that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
better. And
Yeah.
when he gets back, all hell is breaking loose because what happened is is that Snively said the code word to invoke
Snively,
Armageddon, where all of the robots just start
Snively,
attacking everything in sight.
Snively accidentally was a what's the term? Uh, my brain wants to say Manchurian candidate, but that's wrong. That's like flat out wrong.
Yeah,
It's like a sleeper phrase. He's got a sleeper phrase
yeah, yeah,
because he says the exact phrase to completion.
yeah. So I think one of the best parts about this whole thing is that every character feels super on point. Every character feels fully fleshed out. And if you were to basically mark where Archie Sonic became Archie Sonic, I would say it was this two-part
Yeah,
comic series.
yeah, it's Eve's introduction and then this one because it's got all the hallmarks of stuff that happens throughout the entire series. We've got the intrigue, we've got weirdly post-apocalyptic robots.
Uh, the timeline sesh universal drifting of characters and plot points, and I think it was fantastic as a comic. I actually gave both halves of this comic a gold,
Yeah,
and I am not and I am like completely confident that this miniseries I'm going to be reflecting back on a while later when trying to think of like how characters interact with each other.
I will say this. If we are looking at the A side of 22 and issue 21, it's my first platinum. If we are looking at these two comics separately, like 21 separately and 22 separately, they are both gold
Yeah,
because this is the standard that the rest of the comic will start to be judged on. I can now correctly assign bronzes, stones, and silvers.
I can feel that too. That it wasn't until this that I can actually like feel out where good Sonic is and where bad Sonic is. And this is definitely like on the this is on the plus side.
It's also that the art is stunning. Like the all the robots look great. Anytime we get like an interior shot of like close-ups of like Robotnik and stuff, he's drawn wonderfully. It's like the art is good, the story is good, characters are good. Great. If you're gonna pick out like two random issues to start, it's 21 and 22.
I
Even considering like the B side of 22.
and then the B side of 22 is a very like calm, non-drama packed like little story involving Tails. And it's a very neat little like cooling down from the storylines that we've had before, you know?
Yeah.
Also, a little bit of nitpick, but Sir Sonic's armor is gold, not blue. Just saying it. I had to get
Well,
that
to
out
be
there.
fair, he's not called Sir Sonic here. He's Sir Run a lot,
Yeah.
and he is offered Anton as food. So
Uh,
that's kind of a little weird.
Knave the Hedgehog is a very important character from Sonic and the Black Knight, and his armor is gold in that one. So I had to like get that off my chest.
Well, yeah, as it should be.
Uh, so let's talk
Here we
about
have our first platinum.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay. Specifically issue 22 or specifically issue 21? Or you would say the
20
storyline from both?
together, it's platinum. They're both gold separately.
Yeah. Okay. So let's immediately fall down a cliff. Let's talk about issue 23.
It can't all be good forever.
So issue 23 is very vintage Marvel, you know?
Oh
Where
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
here's this random guy from outer space, he's gonna do some weird stuff, make the hero and the villain kind of like team up together to like take him out, and it's a weird story. Very Silver Age comics.
Oh yeah. So I liked it.
Uh, I like the fact that Rotor's Ant Farm came back as a reoccurring theme.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Uh, I think that the best part about this whole comic is where Sonic and Robotnik are in the like giant atrium for Earth, for Mobius as a planet, because this guy is like capturing things and
The
like
collector. Yeah.
yeah, he's effectively the collector, but legally distinct. And the scene
Legally
where
distinct collector.
yeah, the scene where Robotnik has to take an oath.
That's real funny. I do like it happening.
Uh, we also get something really interesting. We also get the contest results for the make your own comic in this one, which I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
read.
we do.
The bronze, I honestly think the only reason why bronze was there is because they decided to redraw the entire comic by hand, which honestly is a
That's impressive.
pretty impressive for a small kid, you know?
Oh yeah. I hope that they went on to do more art.
Yeah. Uh, I remember hearing once that Ian Flynn submitted to this contest, but it didn't look like any of his actually like got in the upper tiers. But like, oh well.
Hey, he was a small kid. Okay.
So I gave this one a silver. What did you give it?
Um, I give it a low silver. As I said, I like wacky comic nonsense.
But yeah, it's Silver Age DC and Marvel just never was my thing,
Yeah,
and which I
fair.
just feel like it's
It's not
hokey.
everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but it's like it's really fun to like see Sonic tackle this type of villain.
Oh yeah.
So let's get into some weird stuff. Issue 24. The return of Anti-Sonic and the Anti-Freedom Fighters. Okay.
I like
So,
I you know what? I liked this one.
yeah.
They beat up not Hamlin too. It's great.
So, this so I made specifically a note to remind myself about it. Freedom Fighters HQ, the old clubhouse, and Not Whole Village are all three different things. The village comes from Sat AM, so they're bringing, and it's not the writer's fault because they started doing stuff before the whole Sat AM show was out. So now that they have the context from the show, they because they were running off of like promotional like in development stuff for the show when they first started the comic, which is why Sally looked
And now
different,
they've
which is why
had
Rotor looked
time.
different, and now that they have the shows in context, Sally looks closer to the way she is in the show, and Not Whole Village is there. Which again, Not Whole Village is a different place than Freedom Fighters HQ.
Yeah.
And Rotor's workshop, because an actual place in Not Whole Village, but his main away from town workshop is what's known as the old clubhouse. And we're gonna get back to that in some comics, but that's the one that
In others will forget it even exists.
yeah.
Also, Tommy. Tommy's here.
Yeah, I always forget about Tommy being here.
Yeah, Tommy just randomly shows up sometimes. It's great. He's real small, which is really weird.
So Sonic and the rest of the crew are with Rotor trying to use a teleporter, I believe it is, where it's the matter projector, that's what it was called. Because um picking up from SAT-AM, uh King Max is stuck in the zone of silence. And they are trying to basically fish him out by using Sonic to just throw him into there and then pull him back, since he's strong enough to take on whatever is
Because
in
he's
there.
the only one who probably could survive whatever's going on in there.
Yeah. Apparently, this is the first time that the zone of silence and negative reality is mentioned, which is fascinating considering that we've already seen, anti-Mobius, but like, whatever. Like, negative reality is different than negative dimensions, but it's
Yeah.
fine. So,
We're
uh,
still on.
while all of this is going on, the anti-freedom fighters decide that they are
Oh, yeah.
going to show up in Mobius and just disguise themselves as their good counterparts and just randomly hurt people. Which leads
I'd say
to,
it almost kills several
yeah,
of
and
Evil and Anton, who I'm just going to call Patch because I can't not. He almost runs like three people over.
yeah. Uh, and they all start like fighting each other. Oh my gosh. I forgot.
His accent is also wrong. It took me so long to realize that.
Antoine,
His
why does
vowels
your
are
voice
wrong.
sound weird? And then you start talking, they're like, "You're not Antoine. You don't sound French. You sound French Canadian."
He
And
does.
then
He
everyone that
does.
gets that joke claps. Um, okay, so my biggest issue with this comic is not the fact, is not the, uh, it's that it's kind of boring. Like, overall, it's just not really
Yeah.
that exciting of a comic, but at least we got to see these characters, which is neat.
Yeah.
And
Also,
the way
Prince
that they take care of
of
them is
Pig
very fun.
and Hamlet are different. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Also, the town is rightfully upset.
yeah, so they're upset. Sonic and the rest of the Free Fighters
Are thrown out
dress,
of town. They're exiles.
disguise themselves as traveling Romanians, to say a more politically
Yeah.
correct term. Uh, and then just
Yeah, it's real offensive. That's not the most offensive
it's
thing
not the
that this
most offensive
comic
it
has
could
done.
have been, but it's still like, ugh.
Oh, it's not good.
Uh,
It's it drips of the 90s like really badly.
the '90s really liked to, I don't want to say glorify, but I do want to but they really did like
No, they did glorify
I
stereotypes.
they did glorify that stereotype a lot in the 90s to the point where people forgot that that wasn't what they were actually called. Uh like what their actual names are. So it's like, uh, but yeah. Um so they start fighting and then Sally suggests changing partners because Sonic can fight Sonic all day, but Sally knows how to take Sonic out, you know? It's like and
Yeah.
it's very fun to watch Tails just completely mop the floor with Anti-Sonic, which is
Oh,
very
yes.
fun.
Well, it's because he's the only one fast enough, is the thing. The other people are all normal. Tails is actually the fast one. Also, Sonic does call evil Sonic handsome. Evil Sonic does call him pretty boy, and I think that's relatively funny.
That's fair. I gave this issue a bronze.
I give it a I give it a silver. It's not quite, it's like in between a low and a normal silver.
That's fair. Um, but then again, your praise for issue 22 and 21 overshadows literally every other issue in this whole set, so it's
Oh, it
fair.
is, yeah. It like unbalances every comic that comes after it. It's very unfair for it to be there and be so good.
And man, I want to talk about it right now. Like, I want to talk about issue 25, but we have to wait until next.
We have to wait. It's too much.
I have to scroll to look at all of my notes on my phone. Like, it is a
Yeah,
long set of notes, and I really like that issue, but we're gonna have to talk about that later.
we don't have a choice. It's like there's too much to go through. There's way too much.
But I will say,
There's also like way too much story going on in 25 alone.
so how did you feel about um both from the Sally B-side miniseries into the special issue into the Sally miniseries? I feel like that whole
I
story arc is actually pretty well made. I honestly think that
I
it's
think we read them and talked about them in the correct order because you definitely don't want to be talking about the miniseries in the same breath as 22 especially.
fair. And I will say that
It's very cohesive. You can
Ken
tell where the
writing
story is going now.
Ken Pender's writing Sally is oddly good. And we're gonna get into some other characters he writes well, but in at least
When
this
he just
early
writes out, it's fine. It's good.
yeah, I
There
honestly
are
think
other
that
characters he excels at.
and we're gonna get into this whole thing later, but it really does feel like that Ken really liked writing Sally as a character. And you could kind of see the way he kind of venerates her spirit. And it's
Yeah.
neat to read. And we're going to get into some of his more weirder comics later.
Oh
But the
yeah.
way he writes
There's
Sally,
one I'm thinking of in particular that um there are good parts of that comic, but for certain parts of it it might have to be a stone. Like, and there's some wonderfully gorgeous scenes. And then there's that scene right next to it. And it's like, dude, why? She's you can't be drawing her. You can't be telling people to draw her that way at all. So yeah,
Okay, so we're not going to be able to talk about issue 25, but I'm going to just say
nah.
right now, uh, I'm going to explain my reasoning later. That issue 25 is my platinum of this whole set. Like it is amazing, and I
Oh
love that
yeah,
issue. But
25's really good.
out of
We'll
this
get
set
to it.
of issues of Sonic Beginnings to issue 25, what would you say as of right now? Again, we haven't actually like listed the reasons for 25 and me giving it a platinum, but I will say that it is. Would you stick with what was the actual like name of that storyline? 1 second.
It's the Eve storyline, right?
Yes, but I can't actually remember what the actual name was. It's called.
Because there's a second Eve storyline too.
Yeah, let me just pull up issue 21 again. The three phases of Eve. There we go. So you
Yes,
would.
thank you.
So
I
you
would
would
give
put.
if I had to pick between 21 and 22. I would say 21 is the platinum because nothing else gets in the way of the storyline. It's just cohesive from start to end. 22 has a great resolution to it.
And then for our stone, you said that you would probably give the stone to the Sally miniseries.
Specifically issue 3. The other two, perfectly fine. They're perfectly fine silvers.
Then what would you say is the issue that probably was the most of a stone then?
Oh,
Sally
that
3. Let me
has
just give
to
it to
be.
that then.
Uh, I would say no. That's one of the closest ones to stone. Here, let me find it again real fast.
Because
It would be.
I think we both
Oh
were
yes.
incredibly hard on issue 14.
Oh, issue 14 was so bad with the dolls. So bad.
It just is an
It was
awkward
very
issue to
bad,
kind of read.
especially after the comic that comes after and the comic that comes before it.
Yeah, specifically the B side of issue 14. I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
the A side.
Oh, A side's fine. A side is normal. It's just the B side is so bad.
So is that our answer that it's probably issue
Yeah,
14?
it's probably issue 14.
Which
It's
is
because the B side is so bad and the A side is so normal and it just makes it worse.
okay. So again, we're going to get into issue 25 later. It's such a good issue, but yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
So, was there any other thing you wanted to say about this set of issues?
Um, I think this is where the comic actually begins. It feels like everything before, like issue 20, was like a series zero. Like how Yu Gi Oh! Has Duelist Kingdom, and then the shenanigans with like, all the King of Games stuff is season 0. That's kind of how this feels.
I think I could kind of get it.
We've got
I
like a
like a lot of stuff
prologue,
in
and then
issues.
at 20,
Yeah, I liked a lot of things in season 0 for Yu-Gi-Oh, but I would never say that that's the heart of Yu-Gi-Oh.
no, it's good though.
Oddly
Everyone
enough,
should watch it.
oddly enough, I had this exact opposite argument about Bleach, where it's like, man, I wish more of season 1 was the vibe of Bleach,
Was
and
the
then
whole
they
thing.
went and did something else.
Yeah, no, as you've said in the past, I really wish Bleach went back to being a magical girl anime. That would have been great.
Yeah, and then it's like the closest ever it got was the Bount filler arc that more people are like, oh hey, the Bounts are actually kind of a cool set of characters. And it's like, yeah, turns out that when you
Because it's
watch
filler.
filler, you find cool things. But either way, uh I think that's good. I
Yeah,
think I think we're good for this week.
yeah.
Anyway, we'll see all y'all later. Goodbye everyone.
See ya. Bye.